Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 786 for the 27th of October 2023. Richard Saunders coming to you from the Wildlife Garden or Wildlife Walk here at the Flamingo Hotel Casino in Las Vegas. And I'm wandering around here. There are large ponds and pools, and there's a giant carp, a Japanese carp I think it is, ducks. I can see a turtle, lots of birds flying around. This is quite something. And if I peer through these trees, I can see 5 or 6 or 7 pink flamingos, which is appropriate, really, being at the Flamingo Hotel. I'm here for a very quick few days to enjoy some of SciCon, the Committee for Skeptical Inquiries Convention. And coming up on this week's show, a few quick grab bags, bits and pieces, chatting to people here at SciCon. Later on in this week's show, I speak to Stephen Bavaro, who will be speaking at Skepticon. Skepticon in Melbourne, coming up at the beginning of December. And I hope to get some more interviews to encourage you to go to that wonderful convention in Melbourne. The Book of Tim this week looks at flying sorcery, flying saucers and hoaxes. A story written by my friend Dr. Steve Roberts. And in the Trove segment, we're going to look at general paranormal. Just a general search for the paranormal in the history of Australian newspapers. Let me wander over here to this lovely, fake but lovely nevertheless waterfall. Lots of giant carp swimming around here. It's a bit early in the morning. People are sort of getting themselves together. Although being a casino, of course, people are still 24 hours a day trying their luck. Oh, yes. Anyway, now it's time for me to wander back inside, see if I can find a nice coffee to start my day. And while I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. SciCon 2023, the Flamingo Hotel, Las Vegas. It's day 3, I think it is. It's Friday afternoon. I've just snuck out to make a quick recording. It's a pleasure to be here. It's wonderful to be here. In fact, I'm seeing so many old friends I haven't seen for quite some time. And what follows is a little grab bag of just interviews here and there, impressions, thoughts. Hopefully in the coming weeks I can bring you longer interviews from this meeting. It's a sneak around the door here and look into the ballroom where the meeting is. Packed with very happy people listening to very interesting lectures, and that's where I should be. I'll sneak in now and stay tuned for some little bits and pieces. SciCon 2023, I'm in Las Vegas, and I'm with Jim Underdown. Hello, Jim.
Hello, Richard. How are you?
I don't know, I'm beside myself because I'm seeing lots of people who I admire over the years, lots of friends like yourself. Now, you were telling me that you had a very successful workshop, and I'm cursing the fact that I couldn't go. What was that all about?
Yeah, Kenny Biddle and I did the investigations/testing workshop yesterday. It was sold out. We had a very enthusiastic crowd, and no one was visibly asleep during the entire thing.
That's a plus.
Yeah.
That's exactly the sort of thing I would have loved to have seen that. I'm so sorry I couldn't see that one.
You know, you probably know most of this stuff, but it's sometimes it's fun just to review a little bit. And I did a couple of cheats on a telepathy test, and someone came up to me afterward and said, "Boy, I thought your example was guessing several correct in a row." And I thought you were in big trouble until we realized he was cheating. So I said, good, well, we were convincing cheaters at least.
And you're in fine company. At this convention, I saw Richard Wiseman in the hallway. You're telling me Massimo Polidoro is here, an old friend of mine I haven't seen for some years. And Eve, there were great skeptics here, and Brian Dunning.
Oh, I love Wiseman is one of my favorites, and Massimo Polidoro. In fact, the three of us went down the street to a museum called Paradox, which was full of really great optical illusions.
Oh, wow.
That was kind of fun, too.
Sounds like you're having too much fun. Jim, great to see you.
Thanks for having me, Richard.
What a long day it's been. My voice is shot. It's gone. Dr. Angie Mattke.
Hi, Richard. Welcome to Las Vegas.
Oh, I haven't been here for a long time. It's this hotel we're in was the very first hotel I ever stayed in Las Vegas because I was a guest at TAM in 2008. The amazing meeting.
Oh, wow.
And it brings back lots of memories. So you're not on the bill.
No, I get to enjoy this one in
too.
person, just like without having to actually do any work. It's really nice. So I'm really thoroughly enjoying it.
It's good. I mean, I've only been here for half the day so far, but we've just seen the Bill Nye get his award, which was really nice, and he can talk.
He really can.
Yeah.
He does a really good job, and Richard Dawkins did a good job interviewing him, and I think Bill Nye has lots of very important things to say.
He does, and it was really a pleasure to sit there and listen to him.
Sure is.
Anyway,
but
Angie, it's just wonderful to see you because we're old friends.
yes,
We do keep in regular contact.
yes.
And you appear on the Skeptic Zone. In fact, you even have your own theme music.
I do.
You do. It sounds like this. There you go. You see?
Oh,
That's your
yes.
theme music.
Oh, I recognize that now.
Let's go and see if we can find a bite to eat.
Oh, of course. Can't wait. Thank you.
That's Oregon. I thought the first one, but I thought it said Ohio.
So they'll let anybody in here, including Skeptic Zone reporters Adrienne Hill.
Hey there.
Hey, folks, she's wearing a Skeptoid t-shirt, but a Skeptic Zone, what do you call this? Scarf. Yeah. Fantastic. And your pig's gone upside down.
Oh, she keeps doing that. And Skeptoid earrings that are made by somebody named...
From the Skeptic Zone.
Yeah,
right?
somebody
Me.
from the
So
Skeptic
you're
Zone.
really half and half, aren't you?
I am.
But it's all very good because we both listen to the Skeptic Zone, and we both listen to Skeptoid.
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
And you should listen again, a repeat, on October 31st to hear my ghost story on Skeptoid.
A ghost story you're on Skeptoid?
I'm on Skeptoid.
Are you a double agent?
I am.
Great to see you, Adrienne.
Awesome.
One of my favorite podcasts, of course, is Squaring the Strange. It's Celestia Ward. Hello, Celestia.
Hello, Richard.
What are we doing? We're on level 27 of the Flamingo Hotel, and you have the view of views. We're looking through the giant Ferris wheel. What do they call it here? Just the
The
wheel?
High Roller.
Of course.
Yes, and there are others in the world. I believe, if I'm correct, they built this one to be about 10 or 20 feet larger in diameter than the Singapore one because Vegas has to be the biggest.
Of course it does. But through the wheel, we are seeing this famous, what is it, eye? Is it
Well,
called
right
that?
now it looks like the Eye of Sauron, but it is a constantly changing LED sphere called...
Sphere.
It's the MSG sphere, which stands for Madison Square Gardens, which is the parent company. And if you ask me, they missed the boat. They should have named it the Madison Sphere Gardens.
It's going, oh, here we go. It was flashing all sorts of things, and now it says U2.
U2 is playing there. They're opening the sphere, or I should say they did open the sphere in September.
Yeah.
And they're playing a number of concerts, none of which I can afford to go to.
But my goodness me, the view is extraordinary. How's Squaring the Strange going, by the way?
Oh, I could care less right now. I'm here to chat with friends and drink a few beers.
You heard it here first, folks.
I'll edit next week.
I hear you. I
As
hear
a
you.
sponsor, I fully endorse that.
We are up in Dr. Angie's room, and that's Dr. Angie.
Hello.
And we're having a wonderful time. Well, it's the end of day one for me here in Vegas. What a way to end it with this Extraordinary view. So more next week on the Skeptic Zone with more extended interviews here from CSICON 2023. Woo! Oh, little audience, that's great.
You didn't hit stop before the clapping?
No.
Oh yeah.
Okay, here we are.
Oh, there's the outtake for you at the end. Me saying you didn't hit stop. Where's the dice game?
Hello, this is Maynard. Did you know that you can listen to the Skeptic Zone on YouTube? Yes, I know, sounds crazy, but it's true. Also, you can hear 40 logical fallacies with Michelle Bickersma and funny sketches with Richard Saunders and a host of other skeptics. Just click on the YouTube links on the homepage at skepticzone.tv.
Yes, folks, as we've been telling you on the podcast, Skepticon 2023, the Australian Skeptics National Convention, is coming up in Melbourne. It's early December the 2nd to the 3rd. It's a wealth of speakers for you to listen to. And joining me on the line right now, all the way from Sydney, Australia, is one of the speakers this year, a man who's been on the Skeptic Zone before, who's very interested in very old things. Indeed, Stephen Bavaro. Hello, Stephen.
Hi, Richard. How you going?
I'm doing really well. I'm having an interesting time over here in the States, as I normally do. But more importantly, how are you doing? And I hope you're getting ready for Skepticon.
I am so excited. I'm nervous, but in a good way. Like there's some anxiety, but I mean, anxiety always sort of comes with excitement. So I like to just use that anxiety positively. Some of your listeners who are in Sydney, next Thursday, that's the 2nd of November, I'll be sort of doing a practice run, maybe speaking about some of what I'll be covering at the Sydney Skeptics in the pub. Yeah, and it's up on the meetup page if anyone wants to look for that. I'm just really looking forward to Skepticon, like going to Melbourne, of course, and meeting fellow skeptics and others who I've kept in touch with in the digital world, but I've never met face-to-face, like Susan Gerbic and Melanie Trotecki. I look forward to meeting them.
That sounds excellent. In fact, folks, I'll link to Stephen's talk in Sydney at Sydney Skeptics in the Pub in this week's show notes. Now, I know you were a speaker at last year's convention in Canberra, and I had to miss that one because of COVID-19. You were speaking about, as I hinted before, ancient things. What will you be covering this year at Skepticon?
Well, one thing it does have in common, Richard, is that last year I did talk about pseudo-archaeology. I spoke more about, the ancient aliens and the Erich von Däniken and all that sort of thing. I paid a nod to Atlantis, and obviously I mentioned my influences of the professional archaeologists, especially in America, some of whom are skeptics as well, who have really spoken out against fringe and pseudo-archaeology. This time, very specific. I'm focusing a lot on Atlantis and similar theories to that, paying particular attention to the influence and legacy of Ignatius Donnelly, sort of really popularized for the average person what we think of as Atlantis, sort of like the popular romantic version of it. He wrote a book in 1882, Atlantis, the Antediluvian World. Really so much different from what Plato presented. Like, I'll be talking about Plato, who wrote Timaeus and Critias, which is some dialogues. That's where Atlantis is mentioned. And it's really only mentioned there. Everyone knows, or whoever study ancient history or scholars, they understand it as allegory, which Plato was really big on, and the ancient Greeks were very keen on using like dialogues, Socratic dialogues, things like that, to allegories. And Atlantis, and I'm paying very close homage to Kenneth Feder. He's been a big influence on me. If you saw science fiction, he mentions Atlantis was a story the way Star Wars has many parallels. And he mentions how, Atlantis, they were the bad guys. And I grew up thinking, and if you watch all the the mystery shows or pseudo-history or pseudo-archaeology, Atlantis is this romanticized utopian, and it's very big with New Age. It's the ideal state. But actually, they were the bad guys. It's actually an allegorical tale that warns against hubris. They're like empires that get too powerful and too imperialistic, and how they're resisted by like the Athenians. That's what the tale is about. no one really mentioned it, for centuries until Ignatius Donnelly wrote this book, a Ukrainian mystic by the name of Helena Petrova Blavatsky, founder of the Theosophical Society, which I'm sure many skeptics have heard about. She popularized the idea of Atlantis, and she mentioned it as one of the root races, along with the Aryans and other things. And that's what I want to get at in my presentation. All forms of pseudo-archaeology, but especially this idea of Atlantis, or similar ones, the idea of there was a lost advanced civilization, but then it got destroyed in a flood or some other cataclysm. But it was the ideal one, and that sort of intervenes, and that's true. That's the source of everything we see around the world. From Atlantis is, but we see variations on that with an ancient apocalypse and all that sort of thing. Archaeology is the study of the human parts, and that's, to me, that's very anti-human. Yeah, that's sort of what I'll be getting at in both my presentation and sort of in my practice run. And that's what I'm sort of very passionate about, and that's what I like. As well, I'm an archaeology student. I'd like to join other professional archaeologists here and overseas in this fight and to stand up for real archaeology.
That's quite a broad topic in a sense. I mean, you're looking at ancient aliens, sort of, ancient apocalypse, which is very big at the moment.
Sort of not so much ancient aliens, which sort of has a lot of the same sort of things as its root, the intervention, the idea of helping out old societies, but this is more like humans, but sort of lost civilizations that were destroyed, so like Atlantis. So I'm focusing a lot on that and tracing it back to Ignatius Donnelly and how he had an influence on all those that have followed in his footsteps. Yeah, I know if that makes sense.
That sounds like a fascinating talk indeed. Folks, you can catch Stephen giving this talk at Skeptics in the Pub in Sydney coming up very soon. Again, if you're in Sydney, have a look at this week's show notes. If you're in Sydney, I hope you always attend Sydney Skeptics in the Pub. And his big talk, of course, at Skepticon 2023 in Melbourne, early December. Stephen, I break a leg in Sydney. I'm sorry I won't be able to join you from that, but what a fascinating topic it is. And then, folks, Stephen Bavaro, just one of the many speakers you can expect to see this year at Skepticon 2020. Well, Stephen, all the way there in Sydney, Australia, thank you very much.
And thank you, Richard, and thank you for giving me another opportunity to appear on the Skeptic Zone. Thank you very much.
Hallo an alle Zuhörer aus Deutschland und natürlich alle Zuhörer aus aller Welt, die Deutsch sprechen. Obwohl dieser Podcast Englisch ist, hoffe ich, dass ihr trotzdem Freude daran habt, die Interviews und Meldungen anzuhören. Ihr könnt mehr über diesen Podcast auf www.skepticzone.tv erfahren. And now, a reading from the Book of Tim with Tim Mendham.
Hi there, my name's Tim Mendham. I'm the editor of the Australian Skeptics magazine, The Skeptic, and executive officer for Australian Skeptics Inc. And today I'll be reading from The Skeptic magazine, December 2014, which is volume 34, number 4. And today I'll be reading an article by one of our long-term skeptics, Steve Roberts, on flying sorcery, in which he searches the skies for evidence of UFOs and a history of hoaxes. And he says, UFO hoaxes? Surprisingly, there aren't many. Take a big bunch of UFO sightings, say over the last 60 years. The bunch will turn out to be much smaller than you would think, given the popularity of the topic. Dismissing those, none, caused by extraterrestrial vehicles, and those, many, having a peculiar absence of the expected level of detail and information, we are left with misinterpretations of genuine phenomena and a few hoaxes. Sadly for the UFO community, most famous sightings have fallen sooner or later into this last category. And amusingly, a given incident, say Rendlesham Forest of 1980, for example, can be accepted as a genuine UFO event by some groups and rejected as mundane by others. The next thing that you'll notice from your ever-shrinking bunch of UFO incidents is their dates. There'll be nothing much at all until 1947, and even then not much until two mighty waves in 1952 and 1954, followed by a steady decline with a brief resurgence in 1977, caused by the release of the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Nearly all of these were in the USA. Sightings with associated evidence, typically a photograph but usually with an incoherent story, are even fewer. Just one good photo with a plausible story explaining, for example, why nobody else took the same photo would still be enough to command serious attention. Long ago, cameras were exotic toys, and it was not very common for an individual to own one, or, if you did, to waste the expensive film and development until about the 1950s. The Cottingley fairies of 1917 were taken with roughly 3 by 4 inch glass plates that ruled out handheld use and required the subject to pose for a second or so, but were nevertheless usable by complete amateurs. It was parental disapproval that stopped the girls taking more pictures. Some UFOs predate camera ownership, of course, but not many. In 1897, there was a wave of phantom airship sightings, helped along by pranksters releasing hot air balloons with fires under them. This is an old chestnut, but it was still fooling people in 2012 in Warrnambool, Victoria. In like vein, the Wisconsin UFO Club used to meet in a lakeside pub where they could enjoy beef, hamburgers and pizza and tell yarns while gazing at the view over the lake. Some locals thought it would be charitable to provide balloon-borne UFOs for them to look at and photograph. By the 1950s, reasonably priced camera film was in widespread use, and many hobbyists were developing their own negatives and prints. Some tricks were easy to do in the darkroom, resulting in prints differing from the negatives and hence from reality. George Adamski couldn't resist casting shadows in his printing process when he wasn't setting up vacuum cleaners and tennis balls to bolster his UFO stories. The qualities of these and similar pictures now and then, actually, is truly appalling. Fuzzy focus and weird framing, requiring UFO claimants to plead the excuse that they couldn't get the camera ready, even during incidents when there clearly would have been plenty of time to make a better job. Further excuses had to be advanced as to how a UFO could be badly photographed, but no attempt made to snap the actual aliens that came out of it. Very many non-hoax UFO photographs have this fuzzy quality, and there is a reason for this and why UFO events are always at the edge of detection. If a UFO was any further away from being observed or photographed, we wouldn't see it at all. And if it was closer, we'd see the fine details that would give away its identity. It follows that UFO hoax photographs must all be slightly out of focus, and it is a courageous hoaxer indeed who sharply defines his UFO. Billy Meyer, for example, has produced some sharp UFO pictures, but now the catch is that their context is so far from what he claims they show that you can't understand what the objects really are. Usually buttons. After a couple of decades of UFO silliness, the US government finally commissioned the Condon Report to examine the phenomenon and hopefully dismiss it, allowing Americans to divert their attention to education, citizenship, wars, etc. Among the incidents this report admitted it could not explain were the McMinnville photos of 1950, which showed a tilted saucer-shaped craft viewed from a farmyard. Years later, and of course showing the superiority of private enterprise over wasteful and clumsy governmental processes, private researchers would actually visit the farmyard and deduce the camera position used and thus show that the pictures had been carefully framed, not taken in haste, as in the covering story. The overhead wires from which the UFO was suspended were also noted, and a photograph appeared of the farmer's truck, whose tilted side mirror so very closely, resembled that UFO. So that one flew away. But nonetheless, 37 years later, Ed Walters took a series of photographs over a period of some months at Gulf Breeze, Florida. These better quality but still fuzzy snaps were convincing to many. Money began to flow in, and indeed so convincing were they to Ed himself that he felt the need to make a completely accurate scale model of the UFO and hide it in the attic of his house. A hoax picture is worth 1,000 hoaxed words, so the UFO stories with pictures were always the best received and believed. But one by one, the guilt-ridden photographers of the 1950s and 60s owned up until finally there was only one photo left that had any credibility. that taken by the 13-year-old Stephen Derbyshire in 1954. This showed a UFO of similar design and proportion to George Adamski's, hovering out of focus but neatly placed just above a hedge, and again, of an appalling quality. But, a joy of joys, this one was British and thus better than the American ones. It was widely claimed that a lad so young would not or could not tell porkies about such a picture, and for decades it commanded the respect of UFO fans. Derbyshire was even interviewed at Buckingham Palace. Yes, he even deceived the Queen's husband. Sometimes a story gets so big you can't stop it. But years later, and after much stress, he fessed up, and this UFO flew away too. Most hoaxes were done just for a laugh and got out of hand, but some were cynical exploitation. The most wonderful of these latter is the Alien autopsy film bought in 1995 by Ray Santilli. He also bought some still photos, but chose not to release those, as they showed earthly detail better left fuzzy. The alien body was made of rubber, plus some meat parts supplied by S.C. Crosby Wholesale Butchers of Smithfield Meat Market. They should have sponsored the film. But usually it's attention rather than money that is sought. Mexico is awash with UFO videos from obscure people. The dream-based Ninth Planet, Theauba, and Encounter, Kelly Carl stories, made a few bob, and moreover, they are Australian. Nowadays, of course, not only are cameras universally owned and carried about, which has completely killed off UFO stories, but quadricopters and similar drones have also come well within amateur reach. Fortunately, people are more aware than they were. Well, I hope so. And that's Flying Sorcery from the Skeptic magazine, December 2014, volume 34. And you can download a copy of that issue of the magazine for free from our website, skeptics.com.au. And see every other issue of the magazine going back to issue number 1 from 1981, except for the 4 most recent ones, which we keep those purely for our subscribers. And that's a hint.
Hejsan alla svenskar som lyssnar på The Skeptic Zone podcast. Det här är Pontus Böckman från The ESP, The European Skeptics Podcast. När ni har lyssnat klart på alla inslag och intervjuer här på The Skeptic Zone så kanske ni har lust att kolla vad som händer på The ESP. Ni hittar oss på theesp.eu där man finner skeptiska nyheter och inslag ur ett europeiskt perspektiv. Vi ses där!
Go back to those archives at Trove, at trove.nla.gov.au, the online resource from the Australian Government and the National Library of Australia, who employ thousands of people to sit around and digitise newspapers or something. Who knows what goes on? But the result is, of course, we get to pore through the digitised archives. And today it's a sort of a general grab bag of paranormal stories. So, not knowing what we'll get, let's dive in. And where do we land? We land in the year 1991, on the 31st of January, in the pages of the Canberra Times. Psychic free to read jurors' minds. Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Penny Pelletow's trial for psychic damages began today with an apology to the 6 jurors who will hear her case. I know this may sound a little loony, said Pelletow's lawyer, Barry Dubinsky. When I took the case myself, I didn't know any of this. With that, Dubinsky outlined a case that has attracted nationwide attention, raising issues that don't often reach the courtroom. Pelletow claims she lost her psychic powers when a plank fell on her head at Hollywood, Florida, Home Depot store. The injury, Pelletow says, destroyed her ability to sit painlessly through surgery without anesthesia. It blurred the clear-eyed clairvoyance that she says once enabled her to foretell the future. Pelleto, 54, a nurse's assistant from Miramar, says Home Depot ought to pay her an unspecified amount to make up for the accident and the loss of her abilities. This being no ordinary trial, Dubinsky seemed prepared for a skeptical jury. The 3 men and 3 women jurors listened thoughtfully to today's opening arguments and glanced occasionally at Pelleto as Dubinsky described her bizarre exploits. Among the claims, Pelleto predicted the murders of 2 Palm Beach County residents she didn't know. She underwent breast surgery without anesthesia in front of a TV camera in 1986. She had a toe lopped off without gas and without a whimper a year later. She says she saved her husband James from a severe heart attack by piping in to the supernatural for split-second medical instructions. Penny is who she claims to be, said Dubinsky, who promised to substantiate his statements in the days ahead. James Schlock, the lawyer for Home Depot, attacked Pelleto's claims vigorously. There will be nothing mystifying about Penny Pelleto, and there will be nothing unexplainable at this trial, Schlock said. There is no such thing as paranormal ability, Schlock said. There is no such thing as psychic ability. Pelleto, he said, could not even prove that she had been injured in the April 1987 accident, nor, he said, could she show that she had had any paranormal abilities. If she managed to show somehow that she had special powers, she wouldn't be able to prove that the bump on the head had ruined them. If anything, Schlock said, Pelleto was gifted with extraordinary self-hypnotic abilities that should have survived a bump on the head. This is not uncommon, Schlock said. This is not unexplainable. Schlock rattled off Pelleto's long history of accidents and medical treatments, saying her trips to the doctor had not ended with the onset of her powers in 1985. Pelleto had undergone surgery without anesthesia 4 times after the Home Depot accident, he said. Judge Paul Marco has refused to prohibit Pelleto from reading the minds of witnesses and jurors. Enjoy the show, he told jurors. Now, that was a strange story all the way back there in 1991. And now we have what appears to be a book review from 1978 in the Canberra Times on the 21st of January. Mind Reach. Scientists Look at Psychic Ability by Russell Targ and Harold E. Puthoff. Introduced by Margaret Mead. Forward by Richard Bach, Jonathan Cape. $16.25. Reviewer, Barnard Jan Tierweil. And by the way, Targ and Puthoff were labelled the Laurel and Hardy of Psi by James Randi in the book Flim Flam. According to the authors of this book, there is no doubt that there exists a sixth sense and that everyone can practice telepathy. However, as with other talents, there are but a few very gifted people, and most of us will have to resign ourselves to modest performances. Very modest performances. Targ and Puthoff did not begin their studies of paranormal phenomena until 1972. Before that, they were engaged in laser research, an experiment during which a well-known psychic appeared to influence a magnetometer triggered off their work on telepathy. For 5 years they have devoted all their time and much of the resources of a respectable research institute investigating extrasensory perception. Of course, they were not the first scientists to do so. There are hundreds of researchers all over the world measuring the powers of mediums, magicians, and mind readers. International congresses are held, and there are journals of parapsychology. Yet Targ and Puthoff obtained wide publicity mainly through their rigorous I'm sorry, mainly through their rigorous testing of Uri Geller, the man who claims to be able to bend metal by sheer mind power. Under laboratory conditions, Tag and Puthoff were unable to make Geller bend metal objects which were placed under a glass bowl. What a shock. However, they found that in other experiments he demonstrated exceptional clairvoyant powers. Again, I refer you to the book Flim Flam by James Randi. By that time, the authors had developed a strict protocol with which to test people's abilities to see in their minds distant places and objects. A target was selected at random, and even the scientists observing the medium's, and that's in quotation marks, isolation room would not know the chosen location. The subject was encouraged to describe and draw scenes that came up in his mind. Later, the target and description were compared. From many such experiments, it became quite clear to the researchers that remote viewing is a measurable phenomenon. It appears to occur even over vast distances. The telepathic gift could be best demonstrated if the psychic described the scene not in words, but in shapes. For this reason, the authors felt that probably the right hemisphere of the brain was the seat of this power. Telepathy has long been associated with charlatanism, with popular tricks and deception. As a result, many readers may be skeptical of the Tag-Puthoff experiments. Since the matching of real scenes with imagined drawings involves a measure of interpretation, there, no doubt, will be people who readily dismiss the evidence. The authors have been attacked vigorously in some scholarly journals. Drawing on these attacks, a whole chapter of the book deals with the strange unwillingness of many people to open their minds to the possibility of certain types of ESP. It is quite clear that many of the accusations of unscientific conduct and of having fallen for simple magicians' ruses were unfounded. Oh, really? The experiments with regard to remote viewing seem properly conducted and can be repeated at will. The authors have even given certain simple guidelines for readers to try these for themselves. Now let me see. 1978, I think. If there was anything in what they were saying, we would know by now. Taking the task of reviewer seriously, I followed their instructions and subjected members of my family to some homemade experiments. At a previously arranged time, I sneaked into the garden while my wife waited in the house for an image to come to her mind. Looking for an object that was relatively simple, my eye fell upon a pitchfork, and for a few minutes I gazed upon that shape, feeling somewhat foolish and hoping a neighbour would not catch me out acting in this strange manner. Imagine my elation when I found that my wife had meantime drawn a picture of a 4-pronged fork. Beginner's luck? Coincidence? 2 further experiments were inconclusive, and I reserve my final opinion. Now from the Sunday Herald from Sydney, Australia, dated the 18th of December 1949. This telepathy business. Recent scientific experiments seem to prove that telepathy and clairvoyance really exist. For those wishing to know their own paranormal gifts, Strand magazine describes simple experiments which anyone can carry out. If someone looks at a card in one room, and you, sitting in another room, are able to say what the card is, always provided singling, conscious or unconscious, has been ruled out, that would be an example of telepathy. If you name a card correctly, without you or anyone at all seeing it, that is clairvoyance, assuming it isn't just a lucky guess. Telepathy is the passing of information from one mind to another without any of the 5 senses being used. Clairvoyance is knowing something about an object or event without the use of the normal senses and with the chance of telepathy ruled out. Gets a little bit complicated. The basis of official experiments is a special pack of cards, which you can very easily make. taking particular care to see there are no recognizable marks on the backs. On 5 cards, about ordinary playing card size, paint or draw a square, on 5 a circle, on 5 a cross, on 5 a star, and on 5 wavy lines. No cheating, please. Get someone to sit at a table in an adjoining room where you cannot see him or he see you. Let him take the cards, shuffle them, and hold them face down in his hand. Sit at a table in the other room with a paper and pencil and have your friend turn up the top card. Look at it, saying, "Now," to tell you he is looking at the card. Write down your hunch about the symbol on the card. Call "yes," and so on to the end of the pack. In no circumstances will you ask what any card was, quote, "just to see if you were right," end quote. At the end, turn the pack of cards face up and check the correct symbol of each against your guess. That will have been an experiment in telepathy. Suppose nothing but chance is working, then you may expect to get an average of 5 out of every 25 cards right, but not until you have worked through the pack several times. Go back to the pack of 25 cards 40 times, and out of 1,000 guesses, blind chance would give you 200 guesses, more or less correct. Clairvoyance test easy. It is just as easy to test yourself for clairvoyance. Put the shuffled pack of cards face down on a table and take up one at a time, being careful to avoid seeing its face. Write down your guess, lay the cards still face down, and continue with the next. When you have been through the whole pack, turn the cards over and compare each with your guess. Official tests are made with extraordinary precautions against fraud. Experimenters sit in separate buildings. Electric shuffling machines shuffle the cards. Cards are chosen out of special boxes so that nobody sees them before they are chosen. Results are checked and rechecked. Conditions are such that famous conjurers agree they could not possibly get the results. Now, isn't that interesting, the mention of conjurers or magicians involved in psychic testing way back in 1949? Strictly speaking, chance can never be ruled out completely, but statisticians can give the exact odds against chance of any result you may get. Scientists decide that if the odds against any result being due to chance alone are greater than a certain figure, then they are entitled to believe that they are on to something of importance. The higher you score, the more probable it is that your success is due to special power. If you average 7 right guesses for 40 consecutive tests with the complete pack, the odds against your result being due to pure chance is over 100 million to 1. Now here's a very short little item I discovered in the Australian Jewish News, dated 1994 on the 24th of June. Television. Spoonbender Uri Geller is featured in Secrets of the Psychics on SBS's About Us, June 29, 8:30 p.m. Professional magician and skeptic James Randi tests the claims of people like Uri Geller who claim to have paranormal powers. And that, of course, yes, Secrets of the Psychics. And that is available on YouTube. And it is a classic. It is a classic of skepticism and well worth your hour or so to watch that. Just look up, Google, go to YouTube, Secrets of the Psychics, and put in the name James Randi, and you will easily find that documentary. Well, there we are. Just a few mentions in the Australian newspapers over the years to the paranormal and the supernatural. And you too can find mentions to the supernatural, the paranormal, psychics, clairvoyance, and all sorts of things when you visit Trove at trove.nla.gov.au, because you never know what you might find. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. And I am going to endeavour to get some interviews from some of the people here. There's a, what do you call a group of skeptics? I don't know. There's many prominent skeptics here I hope to interview, including Melanie Trezek-King and Susan Gerbeck, both of whom will be speaking at Skepticon 2023 in Melbourne. Check this week's show notes for the link to buy your tickets, and we'll find out what they will be discussing as I've wandered back out into the garden with the birds and the waterfalls and the flamingos. Thank you to all those people who help support the Skeptic Zone at skepticzone.tv via Patreon or PayPal. For those new supporters, I haven't got back to you yet. I've been a little bit on the run. I'll do so as soon as I can. But for this week, from the, well, constructed but nevertheless charming gardens here at the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas, this is Richard Saunders signing off.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for episodes and show notes with links going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone on Facebook, X, TikTok and YouTube by clicking the links at our homepage, together with links to support the show financially via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily those of the Skeptic Zone podcast or any other skeptical organisation.
It's the dice game time, everybody.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means you're going to put on your psychic hat. You've already got your tinfoil hat on.
I got it on.
And this is my new friend, Kelly. And what's your last name again? I'm sorry. Marin.
Hello, Kelly.
Hello. She's from Utah.
And we're all going to play the dice game. This is where we're going to get Siri, because we haven't got the dice with us, to roll a 10-sided dice, and we have dice, and we have to use our psychic powers to predict what numbers are going to come up.
I'm psychic, it's okay.
She's psychic, it's okay. All right, so I predict out of 10, I predict 2.
4.
Kathy says 4.
9.
7.
Oh, and Celestia Ward? 1. So all you have to say is, hey Siri.
Hey Siri.
Siri's not listening. Oh, there it is. Roll a 10-sided dice.
Rolling.
It's a 2. I said it at the same time because
it's a 2.
It's a 2.
2.
Yay, 2.
I suck.
Did anybody say 2?
I said 1.
There were 2 of us that said 7.
There we go.
Next roll. Okay, I predict 3.
4.
5 for Susan.
7.
1.
$1.
Hey Siri, roll a 10-sided die.
Rolling. 8.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us.
What?
And
We have not got it right yet.
Got it right yet.
It's big.
I was doing Price is Right rules.
You're wearing your tinfoil hat, that's why.
I'm sorry. Okay.
All right.
Let's see if it changes now.
What number?
6. 5.
The devil.
7.
7. 10.
1.
Hey Siri, roll a 10-sided die.
Rolling. It's 1.
You got it! Finally got one right. Yay! I took off. We got better waves.
The moral of the story is keep your money and do not gamble.
Yay!
As I say as I go downstairs. Okay.